as you all know, by the Democrats of Greater Tucson. The way this event came about was somehow Joe and Larry bribed me to take me to lunch. And one of the things that we all agreed on was that the future is with our young people. But as we all kind of look around, we know that on both sides of the aisle, a lot of the people that are involved are not as young, more likely, right? So the question was, how do we get young people involved? How do we get them to a really point where they can be effective and get elected? One thing to get elected, it's one talent to be elected, and it's another talent to govern. We want to be able to have people who can do both. Joe and Larry said, well, you know what? We've got a group of people who we think are pretty impressive and who we'd like to expose a little bit to Democrats of Greater Tucson. And so we've got that tonight. And so what I'm going to do is kind of just play moderator, just get to know these folks, and then if we have a little bit of time, take some questions from the group. And we are going to start at this end of the table with Jake Martin. Give people an idea of why you're here and what a little bit of your experience is.
Okay. So thank you so much for coming out tonight, everybody. I'm so thrilled and honored to be a part of this panel. My name is Jake Martin. Right now, I am the Chief Deputy Treasurer of Pima County, which means that I have the privilege every day of managing the day-to-day operations of the Pima County Treasurer's Office, alongside our incredible Pima County Treasurer, Brian Johnson, who absolutely deserves a shout-out. First Democrat Treasurer in more than 60 years. Prior to that, I was the CEO of a nonprofit here in Tucson called Survivor Shield for 3.5 years. We worked in crisis response, 22 years old. We worked in crisis response to adult sex crime cases, and I'm very proud of the work that we were able to accomplish in that organization. And through what I saw every day, working with disadvantaged communities, homeless individuals, people in need of help, I decided to run for Pima County Board of Supervisors in the 1st District.
Woo! Yes.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I lost that election in the primary, but I learned a lot, and now I have the privilege to serve our community as Chief Deputy Treasurer. So I'm really thrilled to be on this panel. I'm thrilled to share my experiences and my opinions as a 22-year-old Democrat, and I am thrilled to pass on the mic to Tre Rhodes.
My name is Tre Rhodes. I'm currently a sophomore at the University of Arizona, studying political science and economics. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. Thank you. Big shout out to the entire DGT family, the entire DGT team for putting this together. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to Jonathan for moderating. I would say that my political involvement can be summed up into one word, and that's opportunity. I think I've been afforded great opportunities in the past 1.5 to 2 years that I've been involved in. My goal is to ensure that as many kids that are across this country can be afforded that same opportunity and have the same access to great rooms and great environments and great people and great pathways to success as I was. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
The way you do that is you talk like that and you say, I can say it in one word, opportunity.
Okay.
Then you stop.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
But you got it, man.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to DGT. I am on the board of DGT, so I suppose I'm thanking myself when I say that. My name is Chris Cosico. I am a Pisces. I like compliments on the beach. No, but in truth, I mentioned I'm a member of the board of DGT. I'm also a recently appointed precinct committee person in LD 17. My involvement in politics is actually fairly recent. I worked as an organizer for initially what was the Biden campaign. That obviously became the Harris campaign, was later promoted to regional organizing director. Kind of oversaw what the coordinated campaigns efforts did in legislative district 17. Most recently and currently, I am the campaign manager of a 501c4 nonprofit, Rural Arizona Action. We're out in the community advocating for rural folks, making sure that folks know that they aren't just a monolith, that there is diversity of thought and there is a real progressive movement in rural Arizona, as hard as that might be to believe, and those folks deserve a voice. Like I said, I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm very grateful to Mayor Rothschild, and I'm grateful for Larry to, invite him out for lunch, because if that didn't happen, God knows where we'd all be tonight. So I'll pass it on to Maria. Thank you.
And how old are you?
I am 26. I am a geriatric Gen Z. I'm the oldest person on this panel. Bring it on. I know. And yeah, thank you again.
Hello, my name is Maria Parsons. I am on the board of directors for Democrats of Greater Tucson, right along with Chris. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. When I heard who else was going to be on the panel here, I was really excited because everyone here is really cool, and I like being among the cool people. So I got my start in politics as a volunteer with the county party when I was 19. I'm currently 25. And from there I became the corresponding secretary of the county party, and joined the board of DGT after I left the county party, and went on to be the regional organizing director for Southern Arizona for the Harris-Waltz coordinated campaign. Along with him, we both had the same position in different regions. And these days I am a freelance writer and serve on the board, and trying to stay involved in any way that I can.
Great. So, pretty impressive all the way across the board. And it's just interesting to me, the ages and the maturity. And I think it is true that people get involved when they're young, and they stay involved, hopefully. And then there's the life experience that comes with it. So we're going to explore that a little bit more, because Trey, you're the youngest here, you're 19 or 20? 19. Between 19 and 26, there's a lot of life experience ahead. So at this young age, we'll say young age for most of the folks here, Maria, just start, we'll go back the other way. Why are you a Democrat? What drove you to get involved with the Democratic Party?
So, in some way, I've always been kind of aware of politics. My parents are both Democrats. My parents are both not super politically engaged, but politically aware as I was growing up. And so I grew up hearing about what was going on in the world. I grew up hearing about why it was important to vote, why it was important to be involved. But the moment that it really clicked for me was when I was 15, and gay marriage was legalized across the country. I'm queer, and so it was, I think, the first time that it really clicked for my brain that, like, the things that happen in politics directly impact what kind of life I get to lead and what kind of life the people that I love get to lead. And so that's what drove me to eventually, start volunteering and become engaged.
Great answer.
Social justice. Social justice, number one, right? That's really kind of what led me down this path. Similar to Maria, when I was in middle school, kind of the real fight was for the fight for gay rights, right? And just seeing that inequity, for lack of a better term, pissed me off. It didn't make any sense to me why these folks were being treated any different than any other group of people. And more recently, the thing that's number one when I'm going into the ballot box is democracy. That's it. That's the number one thing. And one party stands for that, the other party does not. And so that's why I'm a Democrat.
Okay, we're going to work on those answers. Go ahead.
I've always known that I wanted to be politically active and involved. I remember as a young kid, Obama was my president. He was the first person that the first politician I saw. I remember, seeing Obama and saying, wow, this is just so great that somebody that looks like me can be on such a stage. And I was always very conscious and aware of, I suppose you could say, my life situation. I was raised by a single mother. We were on food stamps, public housing, the whole nine. So I really was aware of the effect that politics had on individuals' lives. When I got involved, I remember saying that I wanted to be, strictly independent, and nonpartisan, and I was told that's not how it works. So I got involved. I'll be honest, I'm not an individual who cares much about a label per se, but I knew that I could not be a Republican because they have not and do not stand for the values that I believe in, and they currently are fundamentally opposed to, I think, everything that I stand for and my very being. And so I became a Democrat. I registered as a Democrat, and when I got involved further, when I found DGT and groups like LD17, I really saw the great community that Democrats share, the values that everybody, exudes. There's really this vibe amongst Democrats and Democratic leaders, Democratic volunteers that I think is beautiful. They embrace me with open arms, and I was able to confide in them and share some of my ideas and get a lot of advice and constructive feedback. So I'd say that's why I became a Democrat, really, and why I solidly chose to be on the Democratic team, just because they stand for something, right? Republicans don't really stand for anything but themselves as an individual. So Democrats stand for something bigger than them, and that's what I can appreciate about the party.
So I would say that fundamentally I'm a Democrat because I believe in America and I believe in the American dream. And I believe in the dream that we as Democrats share in the promise of America. Not necessarily the American dream that was true for my grandparents, the white picket fence, the home for people who look like me and no one else. I believe that the playing field needs to be level, that everybody should have access to the life that they deserve, regardless of skin color, of creed, of class, of religion. And the unfortunate reality is that the Republican Party does not think that way. In my entire life, I have believed that where we live is not a melting pot. And a melting pot is a mischaracterization because we're not all the same. And we will never be all the same. We are a mosaic. And every color on that mosaic needs to be equally represented in order for it to stay beautiful. And as Democrats, we fight for that. We fight for increased access to social services. We fight for Medicare. We fight for Medicaid. We fight for our environment. We fight to protect our country for future generations. And right now that's under attack. So I think that as an American and as someone who believes in the promise of what we can achieve, not in what has been achieved, but in the future, in the promise of our future, there is no choice but to be a Democrat.
So, one of the things I learned some years ago was that you can't go from 0 to 100. And what I mean by that is you get people who really haven't worked for the party or worked for other candidates, and they decide they're going to run for office. And sometimes they win, sometimes it happens. But, so for instance, tonight I'm just going to give a small shout out to Miranda Schubert over here, who is soon to be elected in my ward. And she just ran in a primary, and one of the differences was she worked the field, she knew the people, she'd done the work. And that's basically why she won. She worked harder probably than the other candidate too, and maybe some other positions, but that outside, she'd done all that. We've got 4 people here tonight, ages 19 to 26. That's what they're doing. They're learning who the people are, what the issues are, and over time, how to craft answers that are going to reach people. And that's a great thing for the future of the party. So we'll go back, we'll just keep going a bit back and forth that way to make it easier. Maybe you've answered this already, and if not, it gives you a chance to go a little bit, so maybe we'll take 2 at the same time. Let's see. Well, you know what, we're going to go back this way, because I'm not sure here. Here I'm a little more sure. Are you giving any thought to running for political office, or is your interest otherwise, for instance, working in government or working on political campaigns? And if your path is, how do you foresee your path going forward?
I do not have any intention of running for office. It's possible that, when I'm a bit older that I would run for something local. It's not out of the question, but I am a behind-the-scenes person. I am someone who likes, I'm a freelance writer. Like, that's what I'm passionate about. I like being the person behind the scenes who is constructing the message. I don't like being the person in front of cameras. So, no, I like campaign work. I really liked working on the coordinate campaign last year. Campaign work behind the scenes, keeping the gears running, keeping things on the track.
Everybody who runs for office, get her information. She's pushing it down all over. Chris?
Everybody should get Maria's information. I say this both as a former colleague and a former subordinate of hers. She's excellent. As far as running for office, my views on that are it's a service, right? I think I can think of fairly recent examples where a young person ran for office and the preconditions to it were such that it was just about raising their issue profile, right? That's not what public service is about, right? You need to truly, in your heart of hearts, believe that you're the best person for the job, or there's literally nobody else. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to make you look cool. It's supposed to be because you give a damn about your community. And so, I'm not going to rule it out. But it's, those preconditions that I was talking about, I don't think any of those have been met for me, at least right now. And much like Maria, I love working on campaigns. I had a very, very positive experience working on the coordinated campaign. I was very fortunate I got to speak at a pretty major rally when President Obama was in town. I got to introduce then Congressman Gallego. So if any of y'all were at that, hi, nice to see you again. And it was quite a thrill, and it really did make me feel like I was serving my community, and that's the thing I need if I ever were to run for office.
All right, let's go this way, Trey.
Well, I think there are kind of two camps in politics. You could either say, hey, I'm running for office, or hey, we'll see what the future holds. Who knows? I do plan on getting involved at some point and throwing my hat into the ring of some office. We'll see what the cards hold. But I will say this: I think that there are demographics in the city that are being looked over. I think there are issues in the city that are not getting the necessary attention that they need. And in my opinion, in my estimate, there is not anybody that is doing enough to meet those needs. And if somebody's got to do it, right? So if they're not going to do it, then I plan on doing it. So we'll see. But keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes peeled.
I'm thinking there must be some legal reason why this guy can't do it. I think you're going to see him very soon in a pretty, not a high race, but an important race. And so keep your eye out for Tre Rhodes.
That was a good answer, Trey. My answer is yes, absolutely. Definitively yes. When I first ran for supervisor, it was because I thought that this city wasn't doing it, or this city, this county, our community wasn't doing enough to protect the people that I worked with every day. I had the privilege of running with my staff a mental health care program within the Pima County Jail. I work with inmates, I work with our unhoused community, I work with survivors of domestic and sexual violence. That is why I ran. And I still feel that way. I still feel that we aren't doing enough to protect our environment, we aren't doing enough to protect our communities. And I can tell you, had I won that election, Project Blue would have been DOA in Pima County. Not to give myself a personal plug, but effectively the answer is yes. I can't tell you what that office will be yet because I don't know myself yet. I'm very happy with the work I'm doing in the Treasurer's office that Brian and I are doing on sustainable investing, working hard to increase transparency. I love that. So for right now, that's my job and I'm very happy, but yes, in the future.
Okay, let's leave it right there. Let's step it up just a little bit, pretty easy question so far. All of you have been involved now for a few years with the Democratic Party. What do you see, what has been a difficulty, if any, in working with the party? And what do you think we can all do to make it better? Jake?
That's a hard one. I would say that, one of the biggest challenges that I think I ran into was being taken seriously as a candidate. I think, and it's understandable, I ran at 21 years old, right? So it's a little tough when you don't have a lot of that life experience. But I think that's the biggest struggle that I ran into. So my advice to everyone in this room, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir, if you're showed up at this event to hear Gen Z, right, is to listen. Listen to what the next generation has to say, because there will come a time when we take the reins. And it's important to understand the issues and the direction that the party is going to. But to answer the question, I would say being taken seriously as a candidate.
Tre, go ahead.
Yeah. What was the question?
The question is, you've been involved with the Democratic Party a couple of years now. What are some of the difficulties you may have seen in the parties? How can we make it better?
Well, I think specifically in the case of the party, there are larger systemic issues that the party faces that I think impede the success of young people, or maybe just impede their ability to connect with their constituency as a whole, right? I think overall, if you want to do your part in supporting young people and having the party support young people, urge your party leaders to take young candidates seriously. Urge your party leaders to endorse and support issues that young people care about. Spread word of mouth is always great. Tell your friends about a young leader that is emerging, right? If you see somebody that is running for office like Jake a few years ago, do your best to support that candidate, right? Reach out to them and learn more about them and their background. I'd say the same way that you would support an older candidate, do all of that, but do that for a younger candidate. I'd say in summary, that's how I think you could best aid young people in the Democratic Party.
All right. So I think something that obviously both parties need a lot of is more young people. And look at us. We don't know any young people. We know our kids, okay? And so it really does become incumbent on you to go out, and it's hard. I mean, you've been involved with University Democrats. It's hard, but you got to do it. It's the hard work that makes you a good candidate. Now, Jake, I got to tell you, I've been a lawyer now, 40-some years. I mean, like it's 40-some. And I used to give advice with black hair, and nobody listened. But when I got gray hair, all of a sudden I was really smart. And I just think that's part of human nature. I think the way you have to overcome it is you really have to, you said that we need to listen to you, and that's right, but any good candidate listens to what he or she is hearing. And that's really, I mean, that's what people want. And I always used to joke, I guess I still do, people didn't care. They never even knew. When you're on the city council, they rarely know what you're voting on, okay? What they know is that they met you, that you were personable, that you listened to them. And after that, they didn't care. Now, we do have this little RD problem where, no matter what I'd say that might sound like an R, they're not voting for me, and vice versa. And we do need to get over that, but I think an articulate person can do that. So it's just part of being young. All right, guys, you've been on the organizing side. What do you guys see?
I think one of our pitfalls is actually one of our strengths, right? Which is, you look at the other side, how much conflict has happened there? Pre-FC, that's a whole other thing. But where's the diversity of thought? Where's the conversation? Where are folks disagreeing with each other? You're not going to find it with the Republicans. They're falling in line with dear leader, right? And so because we have this attitude as Democrats, that we want to have debate, that we want to have discussion, that we want to disagree with one another, oftentimes in a campaign setting, and we saw it last cycle, it's hard to organize around, right? We've got folks on the left flank of the party, like AOC, right? And we've got more moderate folks. And trying to coalesce all of those people into one group who can act with the same veracity as the other side, when again, they're just following dear leader, is a challenge. But I don't think the solution to that is to fall in line the same way. I think it's for the party apparatus to encourage that disagreement, right? We saw it, I think the most perfect example of this was the special election in Congressional District 7. I had the privilege of running my organization's independent expenditure campaign for that. And I'll be honest, I was nervous that my candidate wasn't going to win at times. Because the field was great. There were well-spoken individuals, there were people with phenomenal connections, and frankly, a lot of the candidates had a lot of great ideas between them, right? That race was an example of that. We leaned into the diversity, we leaned into the disagreement, and we got an excellent representative-elect. God knows we need her sworn in at Alita Grijalva, and we're all the better for it. So that's the solution, and that's the main issue that I've seen.
I think that was really well said. And so Chris and I have both, seen organizing from a very kind of top-down perspective. We're seeing organizing that is taking place at the highest levels of the country, that is trickling down to the states, and trying to find ways to communicate with voters all across the country. And that's really tricky. But I think that it's really frustrating because the Democratic Party has so much hope at its core. The things that we promise, the things that we want to see happen, they are so hopeful for what our lives could be and what the future could look like. And I think that we have really struggled to verbalize that to the people who need to hear it. And I guess that is one of the great challenges of organizing, just trying to reach those people who need to hear that message. But I think that the Republicans in some ways are doing that well, and in some ways we are not doing that well. And I think that we really need to get that message of hope to the people that need to feel that hope that everyone in this room, I think, is familiar with.
Well, that's going to lead me, keep that mic, that's going to lead me to my last question before I open it up for these folks, is, because you talked about how do you get the message out, and I ran for office in 2011. We probably spent 5 to 10% of our money on social media. I think now 65%, maybe more. And that's a two-part question, maybe more to these guys who are going to run for office. How do we get that message out? What is the role of social media? And if you're running for office, have you checked your social media accounts lately? Have you seen what you've sent on them? Because you might want to double check that. You've been in it. How are we going to get the message out?
Social media is absolutely huge, especially for reaching younger Democrats and younger people. Everyone's on social media. Everyone is getting a lot of messaging through social media. So getting that message out onto social media is very important. But I think that where we are falling short is less in the methods that we are communicating and more the message itself that we are communicating. And I think that what we really need to do as Democrats is to be a lot braver in our messaging. I think that we need to stop trying to toe the line between, well, what's realistic? And I think that we do this a lot where we worry about what can we realistically do, and so we falter and we're like, well, maybe we could get this amount done. And I wish that we would just very boldly say that, no, we are fighting for this future. We are fighting for, healthcare for everyone, not just can we get premiums down a little bit. And I think that we need to be a lot bolder in our messaging, and I think we need to give the people who are hearing the message something that genuinely looks like a change, rather than just, slight changes to the staff.
It's funny. I joked earlier that I was a geriatric Gen Z, and I fear this is gonna show off how not all young people are monolithic in their thinking. Listen, I'm not going to deny that social media is an important tool, and I'll shout out Miranda Schubert. I think what her campaign has done, particularly with the Tucson takes, has been a delight to see. But the thing that I find troubling, particularly when we're looking at this last election cycle, and we've all seen it on the news, is younger folks shifting to the right? There's a reason why that happened. It's because the internet doesn't value truth. Yeah, it doesn't value truth. It doesn't value wholesomeness. It doesn't value hope. It values algorithmic engagement. And what does that engagement look like? Let me show you the most horrific shit I could imagine. And you're gonna stay on this website, and you're gonna interact with it longer, and you're gonna give me that sweet, sweet ad. It's poisoning the discourse, right? Short term, our answer should be, let's find somebody who's as masterful, and I don't love the guy by any means, but Donald Trump knows how to manipulate social media, right? He knows how to say the most outlandish things and get engagement from it. We need to find somebody like that. That's how we'll win. But that said, that's not good for the long-term discourse of this country, right? We see the division, we see the vitriol, and it's continuing to deepen and widen. I think ultimately, like Maria said, we need somebody with bold ideas who's able to communicate that message effectively and in a way that makes the country better rather than making it worse.
Okay, before I send it over to the potential candidates, stay over here, because Chris, you talked about earlier about how it was important to have that diversity of thought, have that dialogue, which the other side really doesn't have. And so what do you do about someone like me who's not on social media at all, okay? And it might be hard to believe. I still get the newspaper, I read the doom scroller, that's a little bit concerning. And one of the old, I don't think it's gonna change, is they say that elections are won between the 40s. And what that means is, you got 40% you're never going to touch, and you got 40% you're never going to touch, and you got that 20% in the middle. And I think you're right. You've got to at least say what those ideals are. But that 20% in the middle are probably your pragmatists, and they're the ones that are going to decide the election. Okay? So how do you balance? We'll start with Maria and then come back over here. How do you balance that thought with need to win elections?
Well, so kind of tying back to what I was talking about with kind of being bold, I think that it's true that those are the people who you're going to sway, that 20%, but I think that we focus so much on trying to sway that 20% that I think we often take that 40% for granted. And I think that that is one of the ways that we fall short. Because especially with young people, voter registration and voter turnout is not what we would like it to be. And I think that that's, they may be Democrat, they may believe in our ideals and everything, but how do you actually get them motivated to do what needs to be done? And so I think that we do actually need to focus a lot more on that 40% who are, firmly in the blue camp, who are not going to be swayed to the red camp, but need to actually get to the polling, get out to the voting booth and get out and organize and do the work. And so I think that appealing more to those strong blue beliefs and less to the centrists who are kind of in between and not quite sure where they stand. I think that we would find a lot of strength in that 40%.
Okay, so you're all about voter turnout.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
I really couldn't agree with Maria more. Look at who the Republicans run. They're not concerned with moderation. We have an authoritarian in the White House. He didn't moderate himself. We need to stop being afraid of being Democrats. To the point of that 20%, right? They're pragmatists. Barack Obama did it in 2008. Hope, change, we're going to make the system better. Now, did he fulfill that promise? I'll leave that for y'all to decide. But what I will say is that it won. It won for 8 years. And I think that's the strategy going forward. And, Mayor Rothschild, as far as, folks who aren't on social media, I'm an organizer at heart, let's knock on some doors, right? The data suggests that that is the most effective way to engage with folks. It's the most memorable. And personally, as somebody who works in the field, I find it the most rewarding.
Yeah, no, that's exact. So, yeah, there aren't any rookies in this room either. You win elections by walking. Now, the problem is that's city council, maybe state legislature, okay? But it doesn't matter. If you run, Jake, you knock on somebody's door. It's amazing how many people will tell you, oh, no one's ever knocked on my door before, and it's like, that's the vote, and because they know you, they've shaken your hand, they've seen, there are a few candidates that when they knock on the door, that probably they've lost a vote, but not many. It really is a lot of just getting to know people. All right, guys, you've heard these guys, but you might be running for office. What's your view of it?
I will say that both Chris and Maria are completely correct in their analysis. I would say that we have to be, of course, using newer tools, right? Adapting to a new generation of constituents. But at the end of the day, door knocking, having those face-to-face interactions, where people yearn for connection. I don't know when the Democratic Party stopped fighting and stopped, caring about its people. I don't think that it has or that it doesn't care about its people, but it doesn't show. We don't show it that much. There was a time where, like Maria was saying, we kind of play too much on what's realistic. There was a time where it wasn't realistic to have a black president. It wasn't realistic for a woman to run and win office. It wasn't realistic for some people to just have their voice heard. But as a party and as a community, we were able to overcome those challenges, right? The civil rights era, that was an immensely important time for not only the Democratic Party, but the nation as a whole. And that whole era and all the legislative action that came from that was from fighting and from keeping the pressure on. One of my favorite politicians, Bobby Kennedy, when he ran for president way back in the day, he spoke about how he was dealing with the struggle of having one foot in the door of the old way of politics and one foot in the door of the new way of politics. But he spoke about having to really urge himself and almost at times force himself to get on board with some of these newer ideas, these newer issues, and really push to listen to the younger people that were working on his campaigns, and push and listen to the college students that he was going around and speaking to. And I think that's really what it is. We have to be meeting our young people where they're at, whether that's through social media, Instagram, TikTok, whether that's through door knocking. We have to be meeting them, but more importantly, what are we saying to them? Are we saying a bunch of nonsensical BS that is going to fly over their heads? I think something that gave a lot of success to Trump and his whole thing was the simplicity of his messaging. The Make America Great Again is very simple. We're going to make things cheaper for you is very, very simple. That's what young people are concerned about. We're concerned about, are we going to have, are we going to be dealing with these insane climate issues for the next 30, 40 years? Are we going to be able to afford to start a family in the next few years? There's a war that's been going on in Palestine. Are our electeds going to finally stand up and stop that genocide? That's what we have to be communicating to our young people. We have to be communicating a message that they can genuinely care about and take interest in, right? And I think that's where the Democratic Party is missing, is that we're still holding on. We're still holding on to these old crusades, in my opinion. And I think we have to let go, and we have to allow ourselves to really stand for and fight for the things that young people believe in. And it's really not a secret what young people feel. It's out there. We make ourselves almost obnoxiously loud and clear sometimes, but if you just listen and if you take it to heart, I think we'll see more success within the Democratic Party as far as reaching young people and getting them further engaged.
So Jake, before you go.
What's different?
I'm sorry.
What's different?
We're gonna get questions. Just 1 second. I'm so on it. Then you get me first. Oh, no, go ahead. What's the question?
What's different between the old and the new ideals?
Let me hear the question.
I mean, it sounds
So
like
the question
it
is-
sounds like you're espousing the service related.
So the question is, what's the difference between the old and the new?
I think that's a good question. I think there are a lot of similarities in the issues, I suppose. I'm sure when you were younger, you were worried about affordability. A lot of you were probably around, or active during Vietnam. I think the issue is that the party is not taking on those beliefs. I think there's still a lot of hesitancy. I think, for instance, you see party leaders on the national level, they were very hesitant to endorse Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic mayor candidate in Tucson. Why did it take
New York City.
or New York City?
Don't give me a hard.
Yeah, no, New York City, excuse me. But why did it take Hakeem Jeffries so long to endorse Zoran? Why did it take even Bernie and AOC so long to endorse Zoran? I think there's still those barriers, right? The issues, I guess, are still similar, but the willingness of the party to rally behind those is lacking, in my opinion.
So Jake, before you go, I'm gonna give you guys something that might help bridge this gap a little with almost everybody in this room, because you spoke about the civil rights movement, and I think most of us are probably in our late 60s, early 70s, late 70s, and I think sometimes, maybe just because of the nature of the way things are communicated this day, people forget a little bit about the history. And if you were born in 1955 or thereabouts, and you were conscious then, or maybe you're 8 years old and you're conscious in 1947, and you look at what occurred between then and 2016, the end of Obama, okay, and what happened in the civil rights movement, and what happened in the gay rights movement, and what happened in making progress. And it's the people in this room that did that, okay? And sometimes the idea that, you guys screwed it up, okay, is not a real good way to approach people that work their lives and really accomplish a hell of a lot, okay? And the unfortunate task that you are now going to have, because of what's happened in the last few years, is just getting us back there, okay? Because we're watching the Voting Rights Act being demolished. Hell, we'll watch the East Wing of it get demolished this week. I don't know what I can do about that. We're watching some real challenges to LGBTQ rights, okay? And that stuff's going to go on for a few more years. And at some point, you're going to need that 20%. And you can talk about it and how we're going to get there, but you're going to have enough challenges getting back, okay? And you don't want to lose, what's the old saying? If you're not a communist when you're 25, you'll be a fascist when you're 70, okay? There's a lot, life experience does that to you. And so I think it's really important that there be appreciation when you go out and talk to older folks about what they gave and what they're feeling, in the sense of, God dang it, we worked our lives for this and now we see it going away. That's why, when you watched that No Kings March last week, it was pretty gray hair, okay? Those are the people that are out there because they're the ones that did all the work. And so you just, Jake, I just gave you all that, so don't mess it up from here.
I would never dream of it. But let me just say, so there is not a single person on this panel or a single member of Gen Z who I have ever met who is not immeasurably grateful to our forbearing generations for the incredible work that they did. with the civil rights movement, the incredible social justice work that was done before us. We are immeasurably proud and grateful of that work. But the reason that we're here is that it is our time to pick up that torch. And as Mayor Rothschild said, to fight, to get it back, to push even further, to bring those changes into the 21st century. So I just wanted to say that before I got to the original question. So,
Waiting for you.
Which was what?
so let me just, so I want to say that I don't necessarily agree or subscribe to the idea that elections are won between the 40s. I am almost certain that there is not a single person in this country, be it a ruby red West Virginia coal miner or a bright blue oyster farmer in Maine, who believes that a single mother should lose her food stamps and medical care while she's working 3 jobs so that billionaires can have tax cuts. I think that the vast majority of people in this country want the same thing for our future. We want gas prices to go down. We want to be able to buy groceries. We want to be able to buy a home. We want to have enough left over to invest. We don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, raise your hand if you disagree with anything that I just said. And I can guarantee you that if there were Republicans in this room, no one would be raising their hand. It's about messaging. It's about being strong. Our message can't be we aren't them. When the Republicans come out and present plans to lower, whether or not they work, right? I mean, we knew that they couldn't. Okay. When there is a plan to do the things that young people need, and I think the reason that we're seeing so many young people switch to the right is because there is a plan. There's a coherent plan that they presented to bring down the cost of groceries. Now, obviously, it didn't work, right? But the fact is, it was there. And our messaging was not strong enough. We didn't present that this is our plan. We didn't say we were going to end the wars by doing this. We didn't say we were going to bring down gas prices by doing this. We said we aren't them. We aren't fascists. And while that's true and it matters and it's important, to the vast majority of people who want an affordable and livable future in this country, it's not enough. So the way that we reach people is we say what we all know, but we say it out loud, we put it in writing, and we communicate it to the American public. We communicate it to the individuals living in the city, in our city council races, in our local elections, because that's where messaging matters, and that's where we start. And we have 3 years left to start, to get in gear, right, and get that messaging together. So
How do you change the lie to the truth? The lie is told over and over and over again. They told them that it would be less prices for groceries and all of that. And it was a lie. But they've said it so many times, they have convinced a large majority of people that are interested in that prices will go down. So how do you change the lie to the truth?
So if you didn't hear the question, it's how do you change this repeated lie, because one other thing you learn in politics is if you say it once, you got to say it 7 or 8 times. And these guys are saying it every day on social media. Jake, the question is how do you change the lie to the truth?
So you say the truth louder. I mean, look, I have been accused of many things in my life, but being quiet was never one of them. So, and knowing when to stop talking was never one of them. So, and we have something now that we didn't have then. And I'll tell you, we have 4 years of their failures. And we have 4 years of what promises not working. To go back and to say, this is our plan, right? This is our plan. This is how we achieve our goals. We say it over and over again, and we talk louder and louder and louder, and we push until those changes are solidified. So that's my answer. You have to be loud.
All right, we're gonna open up for questions. We've got some. Trey, you want to add? Oh, you kidding me? We're gonna be here all night. Look at those hands. Look at these guys.
Well,
Go ahead.
I do want to quickly add onto what Jake said. One of the main tactics that the Trump camp uses, I don't know if you guys know Steve Bannon, he's one of the top.
He's an Oro Valley resident.
Yeah, Steve Bannon. He talks about flooding the zone. So just flooding social media, the news with as much information or misinformation as possible. Just spewing as much as he possibly can. And I think that's what we need to be doing. We need to be flooding the zone. We need to be combating all their misinformation with true information and just constantly churning that out. I think, I do believe in pragmatism. I do believe in strategy. I might, scare a few of you when I say this, but I do believe that there is power within economic populism. I think you saw Trump and the MAGA camp use economic populism to their will. If you ask the majority of people in layman's terms, they will say that they are against the elite. They are against mega billionaires and ultra billionaires continuing to thrive off of poor people getting poorer. If you continue to, if we can craft that message and articulate that on a widespread scale, I think there will be greater success, right? Populism is a beast, but if you can tame it and if you can use it in the right way, there is true power behind it, and it taps into something that is already, I think, within people. It's an innate fear that people have. I think people are already opposed to elites, right? They're already opposed to elitism. So you can find success in playing off of that. I've attempted it amongst college students at our UACD events. I've tried, using that strategy amongst my friends, and I found success with it, right? Framing it as a more, I guess how Trump did it, us versus them, not necessarily saying that we're not Trump, but that we are against the elite. We're against these multi-billion-dollar corporations stealing from your pockets. I think we'll find success in that. But yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Jake said.
Okay, we're going to take some questions. I don't know if they were going to get to everybody because there's a lot. I'm going to go to, whoa, you already got the first.
No.
You did it?
This one's important.
Uh-oh. Only one, that's it, but you're done after this one. Go ahead.
Okay. I disagree with the fact that we have to cater to the base. We have to do that. But at the same time, 30 to 40% of the voting population are independents now. And it could be because Democrats have been so weak, they don't want to claim to be a Democrat, despite the fact they agree with a lot of our policies. So we have to reach those independents. But as young people, how many of you game? Because I have a 43-year-old systems engineering genius son that games constantly. He's married, they're moving to England because they don't want to live in a fascist country anymore. But he plays World of Warcraft. Up until the election last year, World of Warcraft's chat rooms were flooded with lies, the Republican lies about Trump. And then all of a sudden after the election, it disappeared. And so there are chat rooms that take place during gaming that really influence a lot of the people that don't know that much about politics. So how many of you game, and have you thought about trying to reach that population? Because there is a huge population of gamers.
Just raise your hands. Come on, admit it if you're a gamer.
Filipinos, raise your hand.
Oh, look, at photographer's the gamer. Well, I mean,
You guys are extraordinary and atypical, I think, in most of the things.
yeah, but I mean, it is true that we're going to have to reach people in ways we never even thought about before. Okay, I'm going to the far back of the room. That guy back there, I can barely see him. Stand up and yell.
Hi, Don Cosico. Great discussion. Thank you for the statements of the panel. One thing that I did hear is that there is an apparent knowledge gap of the electorate that has not been addressed. I've heard, we have to differentiate, we have to do this, but the opportunity of educating the electorate is so important. As fundamental as why Democrats in the House and Senate choosing to address Republicans is because they're trying to save Medicare, Care Act, which actually affects Trump supporters. more so than the Democrats, I think, in some states for sure. And that is, I think, an opportunity, not only for this panel, but for the party as a whole, to fill that knowledge, rather than being a tit for tat. It's like, look for us for knowledge. Let's educate people. The Obamacare is the next Affordable Care Act, which actually will go up, I don't know how many folds if we let the Republicans do their way, right? 30%. Yeah. So who has 30% more?
I'd love to respond to that. Yeah, and I'll repeat the question. The question was from my father, and I swear to God, I promise, we didn't plan this. We didn't plan this. I do understand that. The question is, there's a knowledge gap with the voter base, right?
There's a knowledge gap with what?
With the electorate, right? There are folks who just simply aren't aware or are perhaps misinformed about certain issues. And I think, Jonathan, one of the questions that you asked is, what are one of the challenges working within the Democratic the Democratic Party? We have a little bit of high horse syndrome at times, right? And we saw this made manifest by the Joe Rogan of the left discourse, right? And I'm not going to say an original thought, but the Joe Rogan of the left, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, was Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But the difference is, we cowered a little bit. We said, and I truly believe that this was done from a place of good intention, but it wasn't the right move. We said, we don't want to platform these people. These people who we have any amount of disagreements with, we don't want to talk to them. And that was denying ourselves a massive microphone to communicate the message, to educate the public, to get them onto our side. And so my perspective is, we got to open up that base up. We got to rebuild that coalition that Obama was a genius in tapping into. And we have to be steadfast in recognizing that, again, diversity of thought and disagreeing with one another isn't a death sentence. It's just being a human being.
Exactly. All right.
And again, we did not coordinate that, I promise.
I have a problem that I've been worrying about a lot. It's a very difficult problem. And I'd like to ask each of you about how you would respond to what I'm projecting as the future. The present administration is very unpopular. It knows that it is going to be even more unpopular. It is already setting up the groundwork for it to either sabotage the elections or stop it altogether. So, in the future, when there is a strong possibility that there may not be an election, what is going to be your perspective on the matter? It's probably a question that every one of us has to think about.
I'll take this one to start, and then I'm happy to share the microphone. The question was, in the event that we don't have an election, or the election is tampered with to the point of complete disrepair, what do we do? Right? And I think I have a unique perspective on this because my grandfather lived under Benito Mussolini. Right? You fight back in some way. Right? Now, I would love to continue to utilize the levers of power that we have at our disposal currently. But if those levers of power have to change in some way, and mind you, I am not advocating for violence of any kind. I'm very deeply committed to the nonviolence movement, right? We leverage that. And is it going to hurt? And is it going to suck? Absolutely. But I know one thing about the American spirit is that we don't give up. And, it's Barathan, to your point. Barathan's on the board of DGT, shout out Barathan. It is scary, and it is easy to fall into that line of thinking. But the only thing that has brought us out of that, and I'm gonna paraphrase a quote, is a small group of thoughtful citizens committed to changing the world. And the reason that's worked is because it's the only thing that's ever changed the world before. And I'm gonna pass the microphone along because that was a deep question.
I don't know if you're going to beat that answer, but go ahead.
So for me, there are two parts to this answer. And I think that one's going to be pretty popular, and I think that one is going to be not very popular. The popular answer is going to be community. These people are not a part of our community. These people are coming into our communities. They are trying to rip it apart from the inside by getting into our heads and separating us and making us weak and scared and angry. And so I think that in this potential coming reality, it is more important than ever that you find your communities and that you incorporate people into your communities and you be there for your neighbors and you be there for your friends and family and you make sure that you are too strong for them to rip apart. The second part of my answer that I think is going to be a bit less popular is that fascism has never been stopped by asking nicely. And I think that you try and keep that nonviolent as much as possible. I like nonviolence. I would prefer things to remain nonviolent. But I do think that you have to be willing to do things that are not what we would like to have happen in a good world in order to make a better world.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing, Mayor. I've heard a whole bunch about this projection in 2028. We're kind of talking about that. And I'm much more worried about 26.
Yeah.
And we've got, other than, 3 electives in our state, the governor and the secretary of state and
AG.
the AG. We also have every congressperson running. I've heard it said by folks I trust that 26 is it.
Yeah.
We have got, as the Democratic Party, so I'd like to shift the focus a little bit, maybe for one question, is how do we get all of you guys as front? Because, like the mayor, I don't know any young people. I'm not going to go down to the university and wave a flag and say, hey, you want to join? It's you guys that bring your friends into the Democratic Party, or at least expose them to the Democratic Party. And I'm asking you about 26.
Yeah, excellent point. Jake was talking about 4 years.
Can I just add a tagline to that? Start with the high schools.
Yeah, there's a lot of seniors in high school that their first time they're going to vote. But no, absolutely, when Jake was talking about 4 years, it's next year. And so, Trey, you've been involved with the university. What's going on?
Yeah, I think certainly 2026 will be the tell. Depending on the results of 2026, we'll see what the landscape is looking like and what the possibility is in 2028. Trump has been open about this third term, right? Our goal in 2028 has to be to mobilize the people. And I think the way that we do that is coalition building. I am a huge fan of the Black Panthers. There was a time when the Black Panthers were working with the Young Patriots, rural kids in French Lick, Indiana, and in the Appalachian Mountains, right? We have to be reaching out to our young people who have differences in opinion. I'm on the leadership team of University of Arizona College Democrats, and we've been speaking with the the Turning Point Club that is on campus, right? You laugh, but that's what we need. We can no longer sit here and say that they're the enemy and that we can't listen to people with different opinions. We have to be able to connect with each other. And the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of Republican students on campus. There are a lot of Republican young people around the city that have the same concerns and believe in the same things that Democrats do. We just aren't giving them a reason to join in arms with us, right? We, as Chris was saying, we do have a tendency to be on our high horse, right? We need to stop that. We need to say that we're in this together, and if we don't fight, there will be no future for any of us, right? That's my 2 cents on it. I'm not a fan of partisanship. I'm not a fan of party politics. I think that we have to be doing a better job of coalition building and branching out to other groups that have differences in opinion, because that's where we will gain success. There are so many independents out there, so many Republicans that are fed up with Trump's BS, that are more willing to work with Democrats, but it seems that Democrats are not willing to work with them. And that's what we need to do to ensure that we have the most success in 26 and that we can later on in 2028 stop, that potential third term.
Well, I'll buy a ticket to the next Turning Point DGA. We got 2 more questions. We're going to take 2 more.
Just one thing
Okay, go ahead.
Troy is saying something that is very alien to all of us. But Trump will get to the Black Panthers, and if he gets to them first, we don't have a chance. And he's gotten to other groups that we haven't wanted to associate with. So think twice about rejecting what Troy is saying.
Yeah, and I'll buy a ticket to the next meeting between the Young Democrats and Turning Point. I don't see how it's being absolute. All right, Jim. I'm going to take one more question. JP, hold the mic at me so no matter what the question is, you're going to have to answer. Okay, go ahead.
So Democrats also have.
Yeah.
So, Maria mentioned earlier that young adults do not vote as much as we would like. And I've been asked to speak on young adult engagement in voting, and I want to speak about that population. And I want to hear if you guys agree with this argument that I'd like to make, that Gen Z, those that don't vote, they will nihilistically choose fascism over neoliberalism if that's the choice. Do you think that's a reasonable argument to make for the Gen Z population that doesn't vote?
Yeah.
Stronger.
Status quo, pro-market capitalism, Bill Clinton as...
Don't rock the boat.
All right. Jake, what do we do about getting the young people to vote? And his theory that the reason young people aren't voting is they're given two choices that they don't like either one.
So there were sort of three questions that took place in the same vein, one from Baratheon, Bill, and Andrew, right? So first of all, let me start by saying what happened in 1812 when the American citizens opened their newspapers and read that the British stormed the Capitol and burned down the White House. The British declared victory. What did Americans do?
Fought back.
Fought back. Rebuilt the White House, rebuilt the Capitol, put the safeguards of democracy back in place, and rebuilt the United States from the ground up. That's what we did. And
Burn down the ballroom.
thank you, Bill. Okay. So to move on from that and to address Andrew's question, I think that when it comes to voter turnout in the United States in general, regardless of whether it's Gen Z and young people or even older Americans, voter turnout is abysmal. And I don't know that it's nihilism insofar as that the vast majority of the American populace is okay with a descent into fascism and authoritarianism. I do not believe that that's the case. I think that what happened in 2024, in that 2024 election, is that the Republican Party and that Donald Trump presented an argument that they would lower prices, that they would end wars, right? The Democrats said, we aren't them. Okay, so why would people vote if their choices are the people who aren't going to end wars and lower grocery prices, or the people who are? If those are your two choices, if that's your distinction, you'd be so apathetic and so frustrated with the political system that I think the vast majority of people just didn't show up. And the people who did picked lower grocery prices. They picked lower gas. They picked affordable homes. It's not what they got, but it's what they picked in the election. It's what they thought that they were going to get. So I don't think that it's safe to say that we are on the verge of a descent into fascism because we elected Donald Trump. I think that in the midterms, because we know who he is, what happened in 2020, Joe Biden won the election because Donald Trump lied and Donald Trump failed. We gave him a second chance. The American people gave him a second chance because we did not remind them that he lied and that he failed in 2016. And because we ran two candidates immediately after each other because we couldn't rally behind one, it was a failure of the Democratic Party to message, to get a candidate. It was not the American people accepting a fascist future. I don't think that that was the case.
I disagree in part.
Okay. So, all right, it's 7 o'clock. First of all, I want everybody to give these four young people a round of applause for what they did and what they to do. And also thank all of you for showing up. A real quick shout out. Most of you I know, but we're here in Don Martin's. I always call it Don Martin's bachelor hat. But if you look around, you'll see a bunch of posters, especially if you go around the corner. Don is a big supporter of the Democratic Party. He gives this room up for nothing and brings in some hors d'oeuvres and some, got a nice liquor cabinet. And so if you haven't been here before, shout out to Don. And again, thank you all for coming out this evening. Thank you, young people, and it's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.